Okay, I'll
We'd
try
push
again.
button so it's red, right? Okay.
Okay, now we're calling this to order.
Try again.
We'll try again. And we'll ask for staff confirmation that the Kansas Open Meeting Act required notice was done.
It was.
All right. And we'll do a roll call. Bruce, do you want to start at that end?
Bruce, here.
Ann Zimmerman here.
Melanie Hedgepath.
Larry Pankratz.
Bonnie Schamberger.
All right. Do we have any guests for introductions?
We do have,
Oh, we got a Zoom.
We have Denny on the Zoom.
Oh,
I'm here, Denny Walgren.
Yep.
all right.
we do have two representatives of Salina Tennis Alliance here, but they're under new business.
All right.
Oh, but you wanted.
Citizens Forum. Anybody want to speak? We're good there. So I will ask for a motion to approve the agenda or change anything.
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, we are good to go. Then we need to look at the minutes from the last meeting in December. Does anybody have anything we need to do or change, edit there? So do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
I second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Moving right along here. Now we're down to activity reports.
The activity reports that you have are from the month of December. December is a somewhat of a light month within Parks and Recreation as far as activities and the holidays. However, I want to point out a few things. As part of our master plan projects, we purchased lumber for picnic tables and benches to replace all the existing wood on our picnic tables and benches. We're having a Ellsworth Correctional Facility paint those and route the edges. And then when they are finished, we will come pick those up and start deploying them to, park by park, to our benches and our picnic tables in our system.
So, are those from? I know that you got a lot of the Downtown Inc. benches. Or is that what you're talking about? They're refinishing.
No, these are wood benches.
Oh, these are all,
solely.
they're
These are
building.
all lumber, 2x4, 2x6, 2x8, lumber for picnic tables and benches.
Okay.
We do have a quantity of those old downtown benches. Is that what you're referring
Yeah,
to?
yeah.
Frank?
They had talked about putting some of them out at around disc golf courses.
Yes, that we still have those in our possession, and yep.
Thanks.
There was a missing light post from damage done at Sunset Park. That was replaced. Forestry, when you think about 42 tree stumps and trimming 55 trees at Jerry Ivey Park, that's a lot of work. But we had a lot of pine trees that had died at Jerry Ivey Park from a pine wilt disease, and they were working through that. Annually, we do our Christmas tree depository where we allow the public to come and bring Christmas trees free of ornamentation and free of tinsel and free of bags to be brought to the 4 parks mentioned in the activity report.
The other day I was walking in Lakewood, and you've spread those along Lakewood, and it smelled like I was in Colorado. the pine trees.
Yeah, we sometime in the next month we chip all those and we use them for various areas, trails. Under instructional and therapeutic recreation, I wanted to point out that Travis and his team are actively interviewing or completed interviews, I believe, for recreation supervisor position and the recreation leader position. Special events. Hosted two, we didn't host them. We had them at Tony's Pizza Event Center, the Mayor's Christmas Party, and a New Year's Eve party. And that was part of our December. I was going to let Travis talk about his field house and athletic accomplishments for the month of December, if he wishes.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. he mentioned it. We do kind of slow down recreation-wise in December, but that's when the field house specifically starts to really heat up. This number still astonishes me, but Gwen had 38 3-on-3 basketball teams, and that's just an awesome thing to have. So adult volleyball is still strong. We have co-ed and women's, and we have 30 teams total there for the adults. So we do run a softball camp over the holidays when the kiddos are off. So that was a pretty good thing for those females to attend. Drop in really picks up. Couple other things. I know I presented the outdoor and indoor tournament numbers to you at the last board meeting. I just wanted to touch on that subject again. You know, overall, outdoor and indoor, we had higher number of teams this year than we did the previous year. So we're continue to improve and increase, but both of them we were still just shy of our pre-COVID numbers. So that's something that we really want to, that's just kind of a goal of ours, is to get back to there. He did mention the staff piece. That's a part of that. And we are, hopefully I'll have some staff to report to you, new staff members in February and March. So I didn't know if Jeff was going to speak to this or not, but the Nemaha Sports Construction, had some weather impact days, but you'll see fields 2, 4, 5, and 6. And I noticed last week with the weather we had some good weather for them, and they got with it. So we're continuing to improve there towards that project. That's all I got.
Thank you, Travis. Lastly, of the activity reports, our facilities maintenance division getting ready to install or finish install of the keyless entry system at the tennis complex, working on epoxy floors, cove base and wall in the concession space at Bill Burke.
I had a question on the facilities maintenance. It says highlights from in November. Is that just a typo, or is that really from November?
That is a typo.
Okay.
So sorry. So we'll make that edit in the minutes.
Okay, thank you.
And let's see, we improved some light fixtures in the Friendship Center. We've been allowing the Salina Municipal Band to use the upper floor space of the Friendship Center, and the lighting was pretty dim. They made a complaint that they couldn't read their sheet music, so we improved the lighting in there to LED. And yep, I think that's what I have from the activity reports, unless there's any follow-up questions from the advisory board.
Oh, I had a question there on the facility maintenance. It says general maintenance work orders and PMs. What are PMs?
Preventive maintenance work orders.
Preventive, okay.
Other questions? All right. So are we moving on to new business? All right, the Salina Tennis Alliance.
So let me do a quick introduction, and then I'm going to, and I have some speaking notes. Wanted to kind of bring you to where we're at today, but also I'm going to allow Liz and Clark from Salina Tennis Alliance to speak as well. So we have, we're very close to opening the Salina tennis facility to the public. We are working through the final details of a temporary certificate of occupancy. Just going back into some historical perspective of this project, it was a public-private partnership with the intent to construct 12 courts, lights, and fencing. Salina Tennis Alliance and their architect published an RFP for a general contractor. At the time, I believe the Parks and Rec Advisory Board gave a recommendation to that project. The City Commission approved the construction for a construction amount of $2.2 million, or almost $2.3 million. Most of that funding was through the Salina Tennis Alliance. They did court naming opportunities and donations. The city of Salina did provide $600,000 of funding. The thought process, is my understanding, is that we were looking at a substantial bill to repair our own courts, and so the $600,000 was our contribution to the project. The city did fund the demolition of the former swimming pool and the former rodeo grounds. The budgeted amount for that was $181,000. We were able to do that for $149,000. The city paid for some preliminary work on the building, including the new water service, bathrooms, some electrical, some minor brickwork. That was $82,600. However, that work was paused because Salina Tennis Alliance indicated that they had a desire to renovate the building for the proposed tennis center. So at the time of pausing, we had not spent that $82,000. We had spent $12,680. So today we are, well, let me back up a little bit. The purpose of Salina Tennis Alliance being here today is to seek a recommendation for the City of Salina Naming Guidelines Initiative. There are several steps to the process. One is an application was made, which is completed by Salina Tennis Alliance. That application was certified by the city clerk. The governing body has already made the area eligible for naming, from the Kenwood Park Drive to the north to Midway Drive to the south. And so that's already been done. That was step number 2. Step number 3 is where we're at today. It's the appropriate advisory board's recommendation for a naming initiative. And usually a naming is of a building or a facility, if you will. Previously, the advisory board heard myself and the Salina Tennis Alliance group about naming of courts. That's part of the process as well. That went through a naming guideline process as well. And that's how they were able to raise funds for the construction of the tennis center. So today, Salina Tennis Alliance will give some details in their presentation about their wishes to come before the board to present their desire to do another municipal naming effort for the building itself. Let's see. There are some interesting differences between this process, the former process, and the process today. There is a donor for the Salina Tennis Alliance, which indicates their desire to give a dollar amount for the building. However, this would be a naming opportunity, but also be a sponsorship because and there's with a funding model attached. Typically, a sponsorship has a terms associated with it, so it doesn't last. It doesn't go on for perpetuity. It has an expiration date, for example. So it's going to be a little different exercise for the agreement when it comes to accepting the donation. Tony's Pizza Event Center is another example of this. Tony's Pizza Event Center is the city building. It's called the Bicentennial Center, but Tony's Pizza Event Center has rights for a period of time to name it Tony's Pizza Event Center. So similar. What we're proposing is to look at it similarly would be a naming and a sponsorship and a funding proposal.
So in that case, how long is the term for the Tony's Pizza Center?
I believe I don't know. I know that Tony's Pizza has an agreement that lasts till 2030, but I'm not sure if the naming of Tony's Pizza would correspond to that.
So is Great Plains also on the other part of that
Correct.
facility?
Great Plains would have a similar arrangement for the hall, for the Heritage Hall.
Okay.
Yes. So yes, the city's property is Bicentennial Center. The manager is Spectra, which has that Spectra Experiences, which has that operating agreement until 2030. However, the ownership is with the facility. The sponsorship, naming, and funding agreements would be prepared by the city staff for city commission consideration. Just to be clear, I don't know if I did that today. Today, what you're being asked to do is provide a recommendation for the naming portion only, not for the agreement and not for approving an agreement. That's for city commission to do. The city has indicated its willingness to contribute to the building project from transferring the remaining funds that I outlined that were unspent funds from the original project, in addition to repairing the roof. The roof does have some leaks in it. It's a flat roof. We don't know exactly what those expenses look like. However, we have indicated a willingness to repair that roof and contribute to the project in that way, as well as the funds that were unspent from the projects that we did not complete and the savings from the demolition of those of the former swimming pool and the rodeo grounds. But overall, the approved funding amount from the city would be subject to consideration and approval by the city of Salina, by the city commission. At this time, unless there's any questions for me specifically, I'd like to invite Clark Renfro and or Liz Bothwell with Salina Tennis Alliance to speak before the board.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for the opportunity to be in front of you today. I'm Clark Renfro, president of the Salina Tennis Alliance, along with Liz Bothwell, who's our executive director of the Salina Tennis Alliance, and will be overseeing the facility. I'm going to start off and just talk a little bit about where we are and kind of lead into the naming request for you all. We've been meeting quite regularly with Jeff and his staff and Mike and Jacob and Troy and the city staff on a regular basis as this project has been going on. I feel from a Salinan standpoint, knowing how our city works and the staff and the ability to work openly with them and collaboratively with this public-private partnership has been awesome. I mean, you look at a project of this magnitude, and there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that go into that, and trying to make sure that we're all on the same page and get this from start to finish has been really hats off to them, and really hats off to our board and supporters as well. This has been a true partnership. During this effort, as we have gone on, the initial agreement was to get the 12 courts with lights put together, and then following that agreement, there was an agreement made with Salina Tennis Alliance to manage and oversee the facility. So there really were two steps in this process, one not contingent upon the other. It just came to the opportunity for the Salina Tennis Alliance to have that opportunity to add value to that, to do something that the city would not be able to do at that level or at that value, we feel. So we think it's good for both the city and the taxpayers. This is a little complex naming timeline as we talk about where we are and where we got to today. I'm not going to read over all those, but certainly we've gone through going through the five-step process with not only the courts naming, but at this point, the facility naming rights. You can scroll up or go to the next slide there, please. Okay. So the construction process began this past spring. We just finished up, and as Jeff mentioned, we're going through the certificate of occupancy process and hope to have that here soon and ready to roll. If you haven't driven by there, I think it's a good opportunity to drive by at some point and see the difference that's been made over the last 6 to 8 months on that site. It looks awesome. It really does. scroll down a little bit more on the next slide, please. And then next. So our request at this point for the naming is $500,000 over 10 years for a 10-year facility naming rights. Donation will go towards the improvements of the building and amenities, and donor will be recognized with on-site signage. And it kind of shows here that on the left is the river, on the right, Bicentennial Center, and the signage there.
Can we ask questions?
Sure.
First of all, it's a nice cleanup. Having watched that old pool sit there for so long and not do anything in some low usage areas, it's nice to see this. Now, when you're naming like the courts, I understand there's some plates that they'll be named individually.
Yeah. So as Jeff alluded to earlier, we have naming rights for that whole site. So we've got courts, we've got hitting wall opportunities. The building itself is a naming rights opportunity. So 11 of the 12 courts have been spoken for, and then each of those courts will have a name on those courts as well as court numbers. So we've got that approved and signed off from the commission to do that, and those will go up here shortly. We're looking for a grand opening in the spring when the season officially kicks off, although the courts will be available prior to that.
So do you have time limits, like the naming of each courts for so many years, or?
Well, at this point, the courts are in perpetuity.
Okay.
So that's the way those are set up. So you can scroll up to the next slide, please. So in this case, the building, the naming rights is tied into that $500,000 going into the building itself. And we're looking right now at phases of how that might look. I'll go back a little bit. When the original agreement was approved and signed off by the city, they had agreed to make the building serviceable. And in that case, we were looking at, part of the site was to be able to use that building and repurpose it rather than having to go and build something which likely would cost significantly more than repurposing that building. And looking at that site, that was one of the appeals to that site. So the city had agreed to do that. As we went into that next phase where the agreement was made with Salina Tennis Alliance to manage and oversee that, then there was a need to have an operation out of that building similar and really not much different than the Salina Municipal Golf Course, where you've got people there that are going in, checking in, and taking care of the golf services in that regard, and similar to Kenwood Cove. So we then had a different need than what was originally set, where we needed restrooms, and we had a building there that had the bones and structure to sustain that. We just needed to make sure it was serviceable and they could do that. Now, as we went through this process, and then the construction phase began, and then this part of the agreement with Salina Tennis Alliance began, the city looked at that building and said, well, let's hold off for a moment until we do something to see what direction we want to go, so we're not putting money into a facility and then it ends up going back out. But the price tag at that was $85,000 that the city committed to. Now, that being realistic, I'm not sure that's something that could have been done at that expense. But that was the number that was presented at that time that they could do and make that building serviceable. So here we are, January of 2023. We've got a fantastic opportunity with a donor to step in, help with that building over a period of time, and also help with just the facility itself. Go down a little bit further on the phases. So we look at the first phase of serviceability, code compliance, making the building, take care of the roof, take care of the flooring, insulation, get it to a point where it's serviceable, and we've met the codes that needed to be to operate at that. Phase 2 would be the operational capability and making it to a point where Liz and her staff can operate out of there, and we've got a facility that actually can sustain itself. And then phase 3 would be what we call player, patron, family amenities, and adding to that over a period of time. And that can be a lot of different things, but you've got the bathrooms itself, and then there could be showers, there could be additional conference room and space there for the facility. But really no different than some of our peer communities that have a similar site like this, that have similar amenities and building. We feel this will be a terrific opportunity not only for the recreational player, but also to bring in events to town as well. Next slide, please. So here's a few pictures of just some renderings of what that might look like. And you can just scroll up. That's looking from west to east in the front. And the facility itself will have gates for security. It will be available during certain hours, and then after non-operating hours, there'll be access to it to an extent. But we want to ensure that we keep it secure and we don't run into the problem we have today, where we've got courts where we've got to come in and the public-private partnership has to come in and the private side has to raise the monies to take care of it. So we feel, in a sense, we've got the best of both worlds here in a facility that will be open to the public, but also will be overlooked and managed to sustain it through multiple generations.
Now, my understanding is that a certain amount of the courts will be locked like for the people using it regularly, and then there will be some that are open longer for longer hours.
Yeah, the plan is to have all the courts open during regular. This is a seasonal event. Right now, we have some of the nets down just because they're not being used. But all 12 courts will be available to the public. Mm-hmm. There will be some number of courts that will be you can reserve them. But if they're not being reserved, then they're open to whoever shows up. But we will have some sort of check-in process there so we can maintain the people coming in and out of there. But
Larry, I think you're thinking of Jerry Ivey Park. That's where half the courts are locked and used only by the school system.
Well, actually, also at Central too. But no, I just was curious because this is a different partnership than like with the golf courses, where we manage the golf course and take care of that. And I was just curious how this operation would work. So.
Sure. So, but no, I think there's been a lot of, public misconception on how these will work. Mm-hmm. And, the plan is these are public tennis courts. But as we all know, whether it's golf, swimming, whatever, you've got to have some fee element there that can sustain these. Or you run into where we have today, where we've got to come in and figure out how we could take care of something like this. So there will be elements of fee, whether that's through tournaments, clinics, lessons, certain court time for folks that need that. But there will be
do all the fees then go to the tennis association, or does some of them come to Parks and Rec?
It goes back into Tennis Alliance, which then in turn goes back into that facility.
Okay.
So we're a nonprofit, and everything will wrap back into that facility.
That's where the pro shop and all the concessions would be too?
Yeah, I don't know if that's been taken that far ahead, but I mean, I think that would be the plan. I mean, there is a concession there, Larry, that...
it's a great, I mean, I look at it really nice. I just was curious.
Sure.
All right.
Okay, so this is kind of a general layout of that. The top would be on the east side of the building, and the bottom part would be to the west. So as you enter there, we'd have an office there, check-in, desk. Then you've got the kind of the brownish, light brown beige bathroom area, which is really key to this whole operation as you have events. And then you've got a conference room and then an area for a pro shop. But we look at this when we look at phases, getting, again, the core of that building so we can operate out of it, and then look to get the bathrooms in and an office, and then look to over time add on as needed and as funds are required. But when you look at something like this, it isn't like, hey, can you maybe just do half of the building for half the cost? It really doesn't quite work that way, but there are some ways to kind of phase into it, so it isn't a big.
And this is a vintage 1940 building?
I believe it is 1940, 50.
I believe so.
Yeah. So, really, we're asking at this point for the name of JRI Hospitality Salina Tennis Center to be the name of the facility.
And so I think if Clark didn't, I think Clark talked about it, but I want to be clear that in part one of the slides was a signage plan where the facility or the building would be recognized by the name at those 3 locations on the specific slide. The signage plan is something that is part of the naming initiative and part of the naming requirements for the guidelines to go through the process. So I wanted to point that out. And just to follow up on what Mr. Renfro said, there is, in the public-private partnership, there is a terms in there to make sure that there are a certain number of courts available free of charge for the public to use. It is a public park, but I just want to make sure that was clear.
Do we need to make a motion?
Yes,
Well, I mean, doesn't the city really approve the final name?
correct. I guess what I didn't go into was the remaining steps. The remaining steps would be there's a public hearing at the city commission level, and then there is an approval by city commission, and then part of that recommendation, part of that action is your recommendation as part of that action step.
So do we need to include the name JRI Hospitality, or do we just approve that you're going to do it?
The recommendation would be to approve the naming initiative, or the naming initiative, I guess would be the best word, to a recommendation that approve or to not approve the naming initiative for Salina Tennis Alliance.
I have a question. What is that building off to the left side of the main building?
So that's the restroom that's open, a public restroom and concession. And that's been renovated by the city up to this point.
That is,
That will always be there then?
it would not be part of the proposed plan from Salina Tennis Alliance. It is the former concession building and bathroom site for the former municipal pool. And that we've renovated, the city has renovated those bathrooms to make them public restrooms. And it's not part of STA's or Salina Tennis Alliance's proposal to include any building renovation for that building.
And then, actually, the large building, you'll have a locker room, and that'll be open just when you have staff there.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Great. Yeah.
Sounds good.
There is a small storage building as part of that concession space, which is not remodeled or refurbished, and right now it's simply that, storage. But the bathrooms are renovated, and they will be open as soon as we get a occupancy for the site. So yes,
I'll make a motion if no one else does. I mean, I make a motion that we would accept the naming rights as Clark has mentioned with JRI Hospitalities.
Do we have,
if that's the motion, we probably should include the full proper name of, I think it's JRI Hospitality Complex.
JRI Hospitality Salina Tennis Center.
Okay.
Yeah.
Salina Tennis Center, okay.
Yes.
do we have a second? Anybody?
All right, I'll second.
Any more discussion or questions?
The one question I have is, should it follow the same naming guidelines that the Tony Pizza Event Center has?
it's going through the same process.
Well, I mean, instead of, because he'd said it's named in forever versus
He
a
mentioned, he said the
timeframe.
court namings, the court naming would be in perpetuity. Those don't have a sponsorship agreement. Those were a one-time
Okay,
donation.
but the complex,
To put the court, and that court will be named until,
yeah. I was just thinking the complex is what, so does it have a time limit?
so that you're talking about the building?
Well, whatever JRI is getting named.
Oh, I'm sorry, not the building, the complex, right. That is a time-bound,
Yeah, it's 10 years. As the commitment is 10 years, that was part of the agreement that we've established.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Which is like Tony,
it's, yeah,
Right.
thank
as long
you.
as that's there, I'm fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, it would be that naming, sponsorship, and have terms associated to the funding, so it'd be over the 10-year span. Thank you, Clark, you reminded me of the 10 years.
Thank you.
And that's why that's why it's a little different process than just naming a court or.
All right, any other questions or discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? I think we're good.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Look forward to
It looks
having you guys
great.
out there.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, we're moving on to Jerry Ivey Pond.
So I have it's a little interesting today. Let me find the area in my packet. So some of these concepts I've already talked to you about. What we're going to be attempting today is something a little bit different, which I have not done before this board before. We're trying to capture the advisory board's opinions in a survey. The survey will come after the meeting, and I will send a link to you to complete the survey. The survey is time-bound, so it needs to be done before the start of day Friday, so tonight or tomorrow. But the preliminary information you'll see that I want to cover is there's been 3 studies done on the Jerry Ivey Pond. We've identified some significant problems with the pond, one being blue-green algae. And the blue-green algae, which we've had for quite some time, can be attributed to the design of the lake, the shallowness of the lake, the inability of the lake to get fresh water from storm-related runoff. So the next few slides kind of go into, that are in your packet, go into some of those problems. So shallow pond, average 3 feet of depth. It was originally designed to be a 4-foot depth at a maximum of 5, and through silt and other things accumulating on the bottom, other sediment accumulating on the bottom, the bottom of the lake has changed, allowing for the water to be warm because the sun reaches the bottom. Nutrients decay, support plant growth, including the algae. Small watershed on page 5 of the presentation. For 1 acre of pond, you typically need 10 acres of runoff or of storm water coming to it. We have a pond that is 0.75 acres, and we have approximately 2 acres of runoff. So we're short some of that water that's required to maintain a healthy lake. The walls are deteriorating. And the survey that you're going to take after the meeting, based on the history of the pond and the issues with algae growth, silting, decaying of plant matter, the weighing the options of replacing the pond with a water feature is something that we're heavily considering. The preference survey would look at what kind of what could you desire for the space within the budget that would be approved. So the survey would be available to you after the meeting, like I stated.
Now, Jeff, is this the same survey that was at the special meeting?
It was not the same survey, no. It was, but it was derived from some of those things that were captured at that meeting.
I thought it looked like there were some different things from what I voted on the first time.
Yes.
Yep.
The information that was gathered at that visual preference survey was kind of giving some information, getting some information in a public format to kind of come up with this survey.
Yeah, I like the way they did it. It's really easy, by the way, for anybody who wants to do it. Yeah, I really liked it. Yep.
I believe this is, so there will be the link I'm going to send you will kind of go through this survey. I'm sorry, go through this information that I just shared, and there will be a link to go to a Survey Monkey. Should take about 5 minutes for you to complete it.
So are we the only ones that take this? I had the idea a bunch of public people were going to take it as well.
That's certainly a possibility, but at this time, the advisory board was asked, I was asked to provide the advisory board with it and capture your opinions and your information and your feedback prior to going on to a next step.
Okay, thank you.
So there's no recommendation yet for that, but I just want to, but as soon as this meeting is over, I'm going to provide you that link and for you to complete.
All right, the next thing up is old business, the cost recovery.
She has a question.
I have a
Oh, sorry.
question. So, if you do the waterfall, where's the water? You're gonna have to just put the water in. I mean, the city will have to provide the water for the waterfall, right? Because
Yes.
there's not enough water.
There is a well there that we could use for a fountain or another feature that could be selected,
And that's just circulated, recirculated kind of thing.
possibly. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But we can use another water source as well.
And that's really what you're kind of looking at in the survey is, do you go with a pond or fountain thing, or do you go maybe with more just a water feature? I think that's like,
Well, I think it's more if the problems associated with the pond are significant, and they are, if the city was to look at filling in the pond and choosing another direction to go with the park space, what would the advisory board like to see? That's what it comes down to. As far as, and that's really, we're still in that vision, we're still kind of what Mr. Pankrat said, we're still kind of in a visual preference survey mode. We've identified significant problems. If you recall, previous advisory board meetings, I threw out a number of, just to fix the pond to make it work properly was $900,000. And plus a contingency could be close to $1 million to repair the existing pond. Bruce, you had a question?
Well, actually, I got two now. If I can remember the second one. First one is, how big of a base or water base at the bottom of the fall would there be?
You say bottom of the waterfall?
Yeah, okay, say like you got the waterfall coming down here. And how big of an area of water space is down at the bottom?
Well, we haven't got to the design phase yet, so I don't know what we would get.
Oh, okay.
However, there is, Salina overall is kind of flat, but there is 10 feet of fall on the
South side.
west side going towards the east side.
Like this one has a big, the rest of them don't have so much.
Yeah, see, having something like this here, then how much the water?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think very much. Just around the edges.
So kind of basically, you fill it all in or you do some kind of waterfall. Is that kind of the two choices, kind of, or that we?
That's what all these choices
You'll-
are.
Yeah.
It's when you look at the different
Right.
choices, we're trying to figure out what,
Right, so it's
to
either
narrow it down.
fill it in or pick out a waterfall base
Some of the other designs would be.
or something.
Yeah.
This survey, good.
Fancier ones.
It's really, if it was not there, if we had to go a different direction, what would we do? So it's not one or the other of filling it in or in this. It's really if we were to fill it in, if we were to go another direction, what would you prefer to see in replace of it? Does that make sense, Bonnie? Okay.
Other questions before I step on in?
I would have one question in terms of, trying to look at these pictures. I mean, it's all well and good. It's kind of like what you're trying to look at. I guess it's just hard for me to figure out, okay, which is more cost effective with not the screen you're showing right now, but like with some of those other screens that you showed. There was the one with the granite aspect there. I mean, I'm not an architect, so I don't know, okay, granite or limestone. Well, I would assume that the limestone is a lot cheaper than the granite. Is that correct?
According to what I'm aware of, yes.
Okay.
But you're right, there are no prices associated with this at this time. With the different pictures you're looking at, it's more of a looking at it on a preferential level to kind of see what we could do.
See what
Okay.
we want it
I'm
to
good
look
with-
like.
The last page, 19, it kind of has what the project, and that's what you'd pick is, do we want to spend 110,000 on it, or do we spend 1.2 million, or that's kind of where we maybe put our preference on how much money we think it should be worth.
Well, what's your comfort level? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant, yeah. So I think that's,
Right there.
This is paid by sales tax, right? Or-
Correct. It would
Right.
be through park improvements. The park improvement funds derive from sales tax.
And if we left it like it is and had to renovate it, it would be 1 million or so.
Correct.
and you just still have probably the same problem with geese and everything else going on, yep.
Yes.
And it also did not identify, that $1 million price tag didn't look at any improvements. It was looking at it to replace what we have, to fix the wall, to make it deeper, it did not address bringing in more water, because we weren't sure how to get more water to the site. It would be a much larger project to get more water to the site from a storm, from runoff.
Any more questions? All right, moving on to old business, the cost recovery policy.
As part of your packet, I did put the section of the policy regarding the pyramid, the cost recovery pyramid. So the first page includes the pyramid itself, the graphic of the pyramid, where at the base, the community benefits, and the top, the highly individual benefit. So from bottom to top, something that would benefit the community, up to community and individual benefits. So it'd be more of a community benefit than an individual benefit. The third one from the bottom would be more of an individual than a community benefit. And then the second from the top would be mostly individual benefit, and the very top will be a highly individual benefit. So as you see on the left side of that pyramid, the higher you go, the more there's an expectation to be 100% cost recovery. So the revenues need to meet or exceed the expenses. And at the bottom, you can see no cost recovery. We would fully subsidize that program because it's for the greater community of Salina. And it gives you the next 5 sections of that after the pyramid. It gives you some examples. And this is directly from the policy that was approved. Gives you some examples of what those different levels mean and some examples of programs that meet those categories.
I think your headings are switched between the 4 and the 5. 5 should be highly individual, right? And 4 should be mostly.
Wow, you are right. This is directly from the approved. Good catch.
So the programs that are 0% cost recovery, are we in the negative then? Like community Halloween party, mayor's party, those things?
When you're looking at a cost recovery, yes, because we are expending, as you can see, for example, for the Halloween party, we spent $3,395, and there's no revenue that comes along with that program.
We're
So,
a
yes.
cooler place for it, though.
Yeah, I did not reflect that as a negative number. That has not been our tradition or our direction to show a negative number for
I didn't know if
cost recovery.
the ones that you do cost recovery on, is there a certain point, if they go negative, you drop them?
That part of the recreation, which I think you might be aware of this, is that, there are certain programs that have a life cycle.
Yeah.
And that program life cycle, I think Travis evaluates this with every program that comes across his desk, is that where is a certain program on that life cycle? We're looking at disc golf, we're looking at pickleball. Those are on the rise of that cycle, whereas things like racquetball, they're past the end already. Water exercise is probably at the very end of that life cycle on the other end. So, and this is also used as a guide to show some of those things. Adult dance, prior to us offering it, was on that decline. Water exercise for us was on the decline. So when I started in 17, that summer of 17 at the pool, I tried to offer water exercise, not much interest.
So the biggest thing is they just like to walk around in a circle?
Yeah, river walking was a much more popular option, and if I was putting advertising dollars into something, that's where I was going to put it to, not this water exercise class where I couldn't beg people to come to. So this, as you're already looking at it, this is the updated cost recovery. I did include a second column on the left side of where we believe some of these programs would fall in the percentage categories of the pyramid. And the last page is the fee recommendations for 2023. As you'll find that there's either a no fee, there is a new program. There's a couple in here that are new programs that we've never offered before. Several of them are no change. So we are not proposing a change to that fee for 2023. The remaining ones are all 10% or below, which is within the policy that within the cost recovery policy, is that no change can be greater than 10%. And I found it difficult to put this into a format where I can combine these sheets to try to give some more context to the request of the fee recommendation and the results of the existing program. Kenwood Cove day passes don't really have a direct expense associated with it. It's part of the facility operation, but it is a fee. So I really didn't have a cost recovery for day passes to point to, or memberships to point to. But I wanted to make sure the fee recommendations are in front of you to consider and to potentially make a recommendation on.
So overall, with Kenwood Cove, does it make money? But
In
then-
a strict business sense of a profit and loss, no. There are contributions made by several other departments that are not included in the, what I look at as a profit and loss or an expense and revenue of Kenwood Cove. Those are not included typically. So we have expense from utilities department. We have a gentleman who works for us through the summer. That's it. There's his payroll. We have a contribution from facilities maintenance. We have a contribution from parks maintenance. We don't pay for water. Electricity is paid by another department. So I haven't started including electricity in the cost recovery statements for the facility.
And how old is it by now?
2010, it was opened, that May of 2010 was the first summer.
Wow, didn't know so long.
Yeah. So this will be our, I don't know how old.
13?
But see, I never know if you include the COVID year because we didn't open that year, so. But
It's 13 years old.
yes.
You
It
don't have
did
to talk
sit
about it.
there in the
Yeah.
sun.
Yeah, it was built 13 years ago.
Yeah. Any questions of any further discussion or questions that you might have for me regarding the fee recommendations for our programs for 2023?
Do we need to take action?
I would appreciate a motion to make a recommendation to approve the fee recommendations for 2023 programs.
I move to approve the fee recommendations for 2023.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions, discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. And then we have general announcements, if there are any.
I just want to say we did get Denny going on our Berkeley Family Committee, and we had our first meeting. Glad to have him, and hope he learned something, and looking forward to the next meetings. We do have 4, in 2023. So hopefully he learned something, and going to be a great asset to our committee there.
I did learn some things. It was very interesting. Learned a few new things, and just overall, it was a good meeting.
Thank you.
Well, if there's nothing else, we need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right, we're good to go.
Okay.